Debbie Talbert Duggar, the author of Writing Solo. Thanks for joining me for this solo chat with Donna Wiegle. Get ready to hear an incredible journey that Donna has taken. I have a book right here, Finding Courage, Navigating Cancer on My Harley. I met Donna at the Mommer rally in York, Pennsylvania this past summer. I sat through her workshop as she told about her journey to bring awareness to ovarian cancer. And there was not a dry eye in that room by the time Donna finished with her talk and telling us about her journey that she took on her motorcycle to bring awareness to this uniquely female affliction. And she has become a warrior for making women aware of this particular type of cancer. And I want you to lean in and listen really to Donna's story. It is truly, truly remarkable. Donna, thanks so much for joining me today.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here with you tonight, Debbie. This is really wonderful.
It has been fun, these solo chats, and I have about 20 of them in the can, so to speak. And I've been posting them every few weeks. So we'll talk later about when this will be posted. But I wanted to talk to you, of course, because I met you at the Mommer rally, the Mid-Atlantic Women's Motorcycle Rally. There was that, see, cat just jumped in the back there.
I see the cat.
And we didn't get a chance to really talk there because everybody was so busy, but I did sit in on your presentation. And there will be a link to that YouTube presentation when this solo chat posts. But I have to say that of the, I don't know, there must have been 40 or 50 women sitting there. There was not a dry eye in the house when that, in fact, I'm tearing up even thinking about it, when that video finished of your trip across country. So, finding courage, navigating cancer on my Harley. I think this book is just, gives me chills to even read the title, and you've done a fabulous job of documenting your struggle. And how did it start? Did you get up one morning and say, I need to do something about this?
Well, that's really exactly how it started. I've been a motorcycle rider. I've had a motorcycle license since I was a teenager. Then I took a huge gap of not riding, and then I started riding again when I was about 50. I was diagnosed with stage 4 ovarian cancer in 2016. I was 56 years old at the time. And what really made me decide to do this cross-country ride to raise awareness about ovarian cancer was I had started to attend an ovarian cancer retreat here in my home state of Maine. A lot of the women were from the Boston area. I learned about it when I went down to Dana-Farber for a second opinion. And year after year, I would go back to the retreat, and year after year, women were missing that I had made friends with, that I had cared about because they lost their battle to ovarian cancer. It's a very high mortality cancer. I'm stage 4. Only 17% of women with stage 4 ovarian cancer survive beyond 5 years. And so I knew what looked to be my own trajectory in this cancer journey. And so it took me 2.5 years to get a diagnosis from the first time I walked into an emergency room and was sick. And I was very healthy up to that point, physically fit, strong, independent woman. And so as I watched these other women losing their battles, it kind of made me angry.
Mm-hmm.
Made me angry that there wasn't any real testing to screen for ovarian cancer. And there were no big obvious symptoms for women with ovarian cancer. I heard my story through other women over and over. It took them 2 years, 3 years, 4 years before they finally got a diagnosis, which usually ended in a stage 3 or stage 4 diagnosis. So I really thought, what could I do as one woman with advanced stage ovarian cancer to make a difference in other women's lives? How could I educate them? And the funny thing happened, I've been a rider for a long time, as I said. My husband had not been a rider for a long time. And I was looking for a motorcycle for my husband, his first motorcycle. And I went to a local Harley Davidson dealer here in Maine. And I said, I'm looking for something like a Heritage Classic used bike, something my husband could get started on. And they showed me this teal and white Heritage Classic. And I remember saying to the salesman, oh my God, no self-respecting man would ride those colors. That's what I said. And the reason those colors were so important was teal is the color that represents ovarian cancer, like pink is breast cancer's color.
Right.
Everybody knows about pink. The NFL football players wear pink. And, it's just, they've done a great job of raising awareness about ovarian cancer. Teal, no one knew about teal outside of the ovarian cancer world. So I went back home. I wasn't going to buy that bike for my husband. I didn't think he'd want that bike, but I got thinking about that bike and I thought I could do something with that bike. That bike.
Yeah, and that's the bike. That's
Yep,
the
it's
bike.
got teal across the top fender,
Yeah.
the gas tank and the back fender, and white on the side. And so I kept thinking about it. I'd lay in bed at night, and I don't sleep well anyway, so I have plenty of time to think at night. And I thought, if I could get that bike, I could ride all around Maine. That was my first thing. I'll ride around Maine and raise awareness about ovarian cancer. And then it became, I'll ride around New England. And before I knew it, I had this idea that I could ride this motorcycle across the country, across the United States. I had never done any trip of that magnitude. My previous longest trip was up into Canada, 1,800 miles in a week. So I was looking at a trip that was probably going to be about 6,000 miles. And I was going to do it solo as a stage 4 ovarian cancer patient. So there was really nothing in that whole scenario that said, this is a great idea, Donna. But it didn't matter. I like big ideas. I like big projects. And how I really got started was I needed to get the bike. I went down to the dealership. They wanted too much for it. It had too many miles. I probably went in 3 or 4 times. I made a 1-pager about what I wanted to do. Couldn't work a deal with them. Was searching on, all kinds of online cycle world and things for a bike. And my husband called me from the barber shop one day and he said, hey, my barber, Stacy, says, is your wife still looking for one of those teal and white Harleys? There's one right 25 miles from my house.
Wow.
Sitting outside a motorcycle shop where they soup up the bikes. And it was a 2016, same model I had seen at the Harley dealer. And so the very next day I went over to look at it. It had 1,509 miles on it, a 3-year-old bike. Took it for a test ride. The story behind it was a woman got her motorcycle license. I think she fell in love with the color, the jazzy color of the bike, and she bought the bike. And it was really too much bike, I think, for a brand new woman rider in particular. And so it was priced fair. I offered them less than they were asking for it, the husband and the wife, and they took my offer. So now I had the bike. So once I made that investment in the bike, the trip was on. It was on. And I had the help of a woman from my ovarian cancer retreat, a friend of mine, Margaret Mastrangelo, and we just started brainstorming. And we would talk on the phone. She lives in Massachusetts. I live in Maine. We would talk on the phone. We talked about fundraising for some ovarian cancer nonprofits, including the retreat that I go to. And my husband was great. I had to modify the bike. It needed engine guards. It needed highway pegs. It needed locking saddlebags. That bike has those big leather flags.
Yeah.
And I needed a plan. Like, what was the plan? Well, the plan was to pack 1,000 ovarian cancer symptom cards in the saddlebags, in little Ziploc baggies. You got it. And so I was going to meet 1,000 women. I was going to give 1,000 cards out across the country. And I thought, where am I going to meet these women? And I'm like, grocery store parking lot. Women are in and out of the grocery store all the time.
Yeah.
I have to tell you, Debbie, I never once went to the grocery store and met a woman because I was meeting women everywhere, hotel parking lots, restaurants, national parks, everywhere that I went. And what I also realized once the trip started was I could give cards to men. Men had wives, girlfriends, daughters, granddaughters, co-workers. And so I started giving cards to men as well. And so this was really my goal, to ride across the country, distribute 1,000 cards, educate women about the signs and symptoms of ovarian cancer, because I work in healthcare and I did not know the signs and symptoms of ovarian cancer, as most women do not. And sometimes I would meet women and give them the cards and they'd go, got it covered. I'm like, you got it covered. How do you have it covered? They're like, oh, I get my annual GYN exam. I get a pap test. I'm like, pap test is not screening for ovarian cancer. And they were stunned to hear that. And when
Right.
that made me even angrier that they
Mhm.
thought that their provider had led them to believe they were, being screened for ovarian cancer. So I think it's our job as women
Mhm.
to help other women in many, many different ways. I'm just helping them to look to learn more about ovarian cancer. I want women when they have these vague symptoms of bloating, frequent urination, change in bowel habits, to be able to go to their primary care or their GYN and say, "Hey, could this be ovarian cancer?"
Right.
The
I
cards.
think I think it's also certainly our job, but too many women are afraid to say, this is what's happening to me, and I want you to do something about it. I know that a couple times it hasn't been life-threatening situations, but I have sat in a doctor's office and said, "This is what's happening to me. Here's my history, and I think you are wrong to not give me this test or this test." And I just think we've been conditioned. And I hope women like you are changing that. I've always, I gave these cards to my daughters. Frankly, I don't have any of those lady bits anymore. So I don't have to worry about it. But I have two daughters, 29 and 30. And I gave them the cards and I said, you need to be aware of this and step up to the plate and say something. So getting out there and you're right, breast cancer gets all the press.
And all the
Breast,
money, but that's a return on investment. 1 in 8 women will develop breast cancer. 1 in 78 women will develop ovarian cancer. So I understand that. And I think that other women like myself, ovarian cancer patients, we need to step it up. We need to come together. We need to talk about our disease as much as we possibly can in as many places as we can.
well, your journey has certainly brought awareness. Now, you ended the journey, I believe it's 6,198 miles, and 5,000 of that solo.
Yes.
Of course, I writing my book, I am on a mission to get more women to get out there and enjoy, that solo ride. And it's not just about being out there alone, because I think we share the same feeling that when I was out there riding by myself, and I still do. It's a whole change of attitude, it's a whole change of mindset, and it's a spiritual connection with the elements for me. And I love how you started your book with your struggle at the Rocky Mountains, because, traditionally in literature, that mountain poses, it's a metaphor for an obstacle. And you certainly hit home with starting out with that, because climbing a mountain is certainly challenging. And so that whole first chapter was a metaphor for you tackling this endeavor, because you are still with the cancer. Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
well, I have to say I'm 5 years and 6 months, 5.5 years into my journey, and it is now October of 2021. We're speaking in August, early August of this year. I was declared for the very first time to be in remission. My oncologist said, "It's truly remarkable for you to have reached remission at this juncture." She said, "If that was going to happen, it would have happened in year 1 or year 2." And in July of 2020, I stopped all cancer treatment. I was very, very sick. My prognosis was 5 years. And I really thought, well, I was at year 4. I thought this is the beginning of the downhill slide, and I knew the drug I had been on for 4 years that kept me stable also created a lot of side effects, very undesirable side effects.
Right.
And I felt like if this is my last year, I'm getting off all drugs. I want to feel better for a short period of time, and then whatever happens happens. So I stopped all treatment last year, and then 6 months later, in January of 2021, I had a clean scan, my very first ever clean scan since I have started this journey. I had a second scan in July, 6 months later, again, another clean scan. My first scan, I'm like, totally discounted it. Can't possibly be. Radiologist must have misread it. I didn't even want to tell my husband, "Hey, I got a clean scan," because it seemed like
Right.
false. And then I got a second clean scan 6 months later. So I'm actually now in remission. My oncologist says It could last a month, it could last a year, it could last 10 years. Very unlikely that I'll stay in remission for the rest of my life. But who knows? It seemed very unlikely that I would ever reach remission.
Well, you took a spiritual journey and it seemed to have worked for you. And that's what I want to believe, of course, and hope it stays that way for you. Using the motorcycle to spread awareness. I love that. I love that. I'm sitting here wishing I had a cause to do that. And there's a couple causes, I guess, close to my heart, but I think that's such a poignant thing to do. And you met with a good deal of success. What is some of the I guess continuing success with that? I mean, you were just at a motorcycle rally there in New York, right?
Yes. So this has been an amazing journey for me. I've been asked to do some public speaking now. I came down to the Atlantic Women's Motorcycle Rally and was their keynote speaker, which was super exciting. That organization raises money for women with cancer, so it was a natural fit for me to come and speak. And then I was asked to come out to Lake George, New York, and speak at Americade. And so I was out there recently. I've been asked to come down to Boston to speak at the Four Seasons Hotel, which is a pretty swanky place.
It is. It is.
Next April for an ovarian cancer symposium, which will be really great because that will be a lot of the top docs in the Boston area, and tell my story from the patient perspective, and just share that. The book has been a great thing. It was kind of a therapeutic thing in a way, writing the book, but it also helps me to extend my mission. Anybody that reads this book will know a whole lot more about ovarian cancer, and they'll also learn a lot about the country. It's kind of two books in one, parallel my journey through the country and my journey through cancer to this point. And I appreciate you bringing up the first chapter because I have to throw some credit to my husband. I had written the book, but hadn't written the first chapter yet. And I didn't know how to start the book. And he said, imagine you had gone to the Grand Canyon, which I did not. He said, and you're standing on the rim of the Grand Canyon. What a great way to start the book, he said. And so he said, was there something that was like that? And I said, the day that I had to cross the Rocky Mountains, I had been looking forward to it. I had picked Monarch Pass as my crossing point. I said I was super excited, and I left Gunnison, Colorado that morning, and the wind was howling, just howling. Debbie, you ride.
Yeah.
Those days where you're leaning into the wind. And I got to the base of the mountains, and I stopped. I pulled the bike over, and I really didn't have the courage to go up across. And I thought about my options. Well, I could turn around and go back down through Arizona, New Mexico, or I could find the courage deep inside, turn the bike back on, twist the throttle, and go up over the mountain. Because if I hadn't done that, I would have been disappointed in myself.
Yeah. And I had a similar situation. The morning I found out my dad committed suicide, I was in Colorado Springs, and our plan was to ride up to Pikes Peak, and that's not a easy ride. Well, once you get above the tree lines, it's a pretty gnarly ride is what it is. And it was like 32 degrees. And my partner, Paul, looked at me and he goes, "Are you sure you want to do that today?" And I said, "Yes, I came out here to ride Pikes Peak." And, I stopped. I had to stop halfway up because I was just hyperventilating, and the grief was just more than I could stand. But by the time I got to the top, I realized why I had to do it. And it's what you just said, because if I hadn't done it, I would have been even angrier. So I think both literally and figuratively, most of us have stood at the bottom of that mountain and said, I need to go up it. This is probably not the best time to do it, but I need to go up it. And you did that as well. I just love the whole mountain metaphor thing. And I've tried several times to climb a mountain. Sometimes it's not easy, but you know what? You mentioned, I think it was in the acknowledgments, I picked out a little nugget. It said, someone encouraged you to start writing, WRITING, when I needed a purpose. Yeah. And the writing is very cathartic, regardless of what you're going through. And I know that was the case for me, was By writing my story the way I did, I was able to connect a lot of dots for myself. And since then, I've heard from so many women who've been inspired to, go out there and make changes in their life. You're dealing with a life-threatening illness. I was simply facing an empty nest, and but I was traumatized almost by the thought of that empty nest. And that's when I went out and bought a motorcycle. I was 52 when I started writing. So the book writing was very cathartic for you.
Yes. And it was interesting because when I started the project, I really had a hard deadline. I wanted to finish it before the Mamar rally in New York.
Okay.
And so I wrote the book and I self-published the book and I did the
Mhm.
book design. I did it all because I didn't have a lot of money to, subcontract people to help me.
Right.
And so people said to me, "You can't write a book and have it in hand in 4 months."
Mhm.
I
I
said,
can.
"Oh, you don't know me, and I live in Maine, and in the winter in Maine, there is nothing to do. So you are
Right.
all the time. And I live on a really tiny island, so there's definitely nothing to do." And I just started writing. And the easy chapters were the travel chapters. I kept a journal on my cross country trip.
Yes.
So they were easy. And I wanted to have photographs in the book, color photographs that illustrated the beauty of this country that we live in, because it was
Yes.
a great adventure. And then I had to write the chapters that were about my cancer, and they
Right.
were much difficult chapters to write. And it's funny, when I finally finished the book, and my husband had only read chapter one as I was writing because he helped me with the idea behind it. And then when the book was finally published and I gave him his copy to read, he read the book and I said, "What did you think about it?" And he said to me, he said, "I had blocked out a lot of that." He said,
Mm.
"How did you remember all of that bad stuff?" Well, I lived it. That's how I
Yeah.
remember it. It's ingrained in my memory. And my husband, as my partner and my caregiver at times, was able to kind of compartmentalize and push that stuff aside, and not have that vivid memory of all the things that we had gone through together. And I found that quite interesting, because I thought, how could he not have remembered all of that really bad stuff in the great detail that I had? So that was challenging, writing those chapters, because I've had a very tough journey through my cancer.
Yes, you have, but I can't help but think that your cross country ride and assembling this book, your story in this book, has helped you come through it, a stronger person. It takes so much courage to do what you did. You know, I just, my hat's off to you,
Mm.
and I applaud you for this. And um, you go to a retreat called Turning the Tide for
Yes,
ovarian cancer
yes.
retreat? Yeah. Is that an organization that someone can donate to?
Absolutely, it is. Absolutely.
Okay. I'll
So it
make
is.
sure that link is in the comments when I
Sure.
post this,
That,
so that.
that would be fantastic. So I wanted to share that with you. So in the end, I had raised a pile of money um, for several ovarian cancer nonprofits. That was, and in raising the money, I was raising awareness, because people who were giving me money then learned more about ovarian cancer. And in the end, I donated $35,000 to that particular retreat, because it's really near and dear to my heart. I can see the return on the investment. I can see
Mhm.
the women who are benefiting from having given that money to that organization. They are a nonprofit organization, and they've done the retreat now for 10 years at
Mhm.
a beautiful lakeside camp here in Maine. I just returned a few weeks ago from the
Right.
and it's just amazing. Women pass away every year, but new women come and take their places. And I kind of struggled in the beginning. Was it beneficial for me to be surrounded by this loss year in and year out? And what I realized was I got more from it than it took from me. And now I've been 6 years going to this retreat. And what I think now is, I'm someone who, when newly diagnosed women come to the retreat who are scared, like I was my first year, they can meet someone like me, and they can say, "Oh, there's Donna. She's stage 4. She's beyond 5 years. She's still riding her motorcycle." I gave everybody that came to the retreat this year, plus all the staff, a signed free copy of the book. And it's been really amazing. Women have been writing to me They're now reading and finishing the book and writing, wonderful comments and thanking me for sharing my story. And so, it's just really been a wonderful thing. And, to have a place to go. I had never met an ovarian cancer patient until I went to Turning the Tide the first year. I was one of only two bald women at the event the first year. I was in the middle of my frontline first round of chemotherapy, and I thought I stuck out like a sore thumb. I had no hair, but really, what I realized after I was there for a few days, every single woman that was at that retreat had been bald at one point,
Yeah.
and now they had pixie haircuts, long hair. You know what I mean? So, I could see when I went back the second year, it was so important for me to come back and present as much better physical shape than I was in the first year, because I was in some pretty pitiful shape that first year.
But that's the power of a group sharing their stories. It's the success behind every 12-step program. And it's the success behind what you just described is when people like you and I sit and share our stories, whether it be with addiction, alcoholism, cancer, abuse, the whole gamut of health and trauma. And I think to participate in that is very healing. So I'm going to make sure that people are aware that they can donate to that
Thank you.
retreat.
Thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. I appreciate that.
Advice for listeners who want to do the same.
Want to do the same as in a solo?
Well, either a solo ride or, bring awareness to a particular health issue, there's all kinds of things I guess you could bring awareness to.
Sure. So I would say advice, and this just works for me. If I say I'm going to do something, like first it's in my mind for a long time. Can I do it? How can I do it? Am I capable of doing it? Who will help me, to get everything done? But then I start to talk about it out loud. And when I tell people my idea, what I'm going to do, because I hate to fail. And so once I start to tell people about it, I'm going to do this, and I talk a little bit more about it, then there's no turning back. You're committed. And you can commit to any mission. Your mission can be anything out there. It just has to be something that you are super passionate about. And you have to feel, I think, that you're making a difference, and you're making a change, and you're helping other people, and you're going to be helping yourself by doing this.
Yes.
I feel, I've had such a hard time through my cancer, but what I feel is I feel great joy at times by the things I've been able to accomplish, having been as sick as I've been, and that I'm helping other people. And there's just something really powerful about that you've made a difference. And my whole goal, to really just sum it up, was educate women so they can be a better advocate for themselves. I never expected to hear back from anybody that I had given a card to, that I had made a difference in their life, but I believed that I would have. And the most amazing thing happened to me, Debbie. I was home from my trip for probably 2 weeks. I was headed for surgery. I had a tumor, an ovarian cancer spread in my chest. I had put it off for months, the surgery, so that I could do the trip. The surgeon and I made a deal. And I said, as soon as I come back from my trip, I'll come and I'll have this tumor removed. Well, anyway, during that time period, I got a Facebook message from a young woman who I'd never met, didn't know her name. And she wrote to me 4 tiny little paragraphs on Messenger. And she said, "You gave my husband one of your cards." And she said the date that I gave him the card, where I met him, what his name was. She said, "I've been sick for 2 years." And she was 39 years old. And she said, "Armed with your card, I went to my gynecologist." And she said, "My gynecologist said your problem isn't gynecological in nature." But she said, "I had these symptoms." And she said, "The card told me what test to ask for." So she asked for a transvaginal ultrasound, which is right on that card. And so the doctor, just to appease her, ordered the test. This young woman was diagnosed with stage 2 ovarian cancer. She went to Boston. She actually lives here in Maine. She went to Boston to have her surgery, and she came back home to Maine to do her chemotherapy afterwards. And her last little paragraph to me was, "You saved my life, and I can never repay you." And I didn't feel like I had saved her life. I felt like she would have gotten a diagnosis eventually, but she got a stage 2 diagnosis and not a stage 4 diagnosis. And here she was, the same story that repeats itself over and over, had been sick for 2 years, trying to figure out what's wrong with her. And so here I was, just weeks returned from the trip, and I had the proof positive that what I had set out to do, I had achieved. And, I may never hear from anybody else, but I have to believe there are other women out there. And since my trip, and I have to say, my only shortcoming of the trip was I handed out 770 cards. I did not make my 1,000 card goal. Very disappointed when I counted how many cards were still left in my saddlebag when I got home. But since then, I have continued. I've probably given out over 2,000 cards by now. I have cards on my motorcycle. I carry cards with me to every medical appointment I go to, and everywhere that I go, I have cards. I give cards to the guy that's mixing your paint in Home Depot because he has a daughter or a wife.
Right.
It doesn't matter who it is. I'm sharing my story and I'm giving out cards. And so I think that that's going to be my mission until I can no longer perform my mission. And Debbie, if I have to give up riding 2 wheels, I guess I'll have to get a teal trike.
That's right.
I don't know.
Because you have established yourself as an angel on teal wheels. So if you can't do 2, you're going to have to do 3. And if you can't do 3, call me. I will put you on the back.
Right,
okay.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
I've enjoyed talking to you so much. I'm going to stop our recording, but I want you to stay around and say thank you for doing this with me today.
You are welcome. Thank you for asking me.